Growth does not happen when everything is easy, when life is comfortable, or when you are simply coasting along without resistance. The real transformation, the kind that changes your mindset, your body, your future, and your entire identity, only occurs when you step into discomfort and stay there long enough to break through. Most people want to grow, but they don't want the pain that comes with it. They want the results, the rewards, the recognition. But they avoid the suffering, the doubt, and the struggle. That's not how life works. That's not how growth works. In a society obsessed with comfort, where convenience is worshipped and instant gratification is the norm, the idea of deliberately walking into discomfort seems insane. But that's exactly what's required. Because every time you choose the hard road, every time you wake up before the sun, every time you lace up your shoes when you're tired, every time you push through a workout when your body is screaming to stop, you're rewiring your brain to understand something powerful. That pain is not your enemy. It's your greatest ally. The people who achieve greatness, who master themselves, who dominate in life, they're the ones who have made peace with suffering. Not because they enjoy it, but because they've learned that pain is the cost of growth. And they're willing to pay that price over and over again. Discomfort doesn't just build physical toughness, it builds mental clarity. When you are deep in the grind, when you're exhausted, sweating, and doubting yourself, that's when the real war begins. And that's when growth starts. It's in those moments, those lonely, silent, painful moments, when your mind wants to escape and your body wants to quit, that you're face to face with your weakness. And if you confront that weakness, if you stare it down and choose not to quit, you become someone different. You evolve. You become more than who you were yesterday. Growth lives in the cold. It lives in the dark. It lives in the early mornings and late nights. It lives in skip parties, sore muscles, and broken egos. It lives in moments where you are so far outside your comfort zone that you don't even recognize yourself anymore. And that's the point. Because you can't become something greater by remaining who you are. That old version of you, the one who hesitates, who gives up, who plays small, has to die for the new version to be born. And that transformation is always painful. Think about nature. A seed must be buried in darkness before it can bloom. A caterpillar must dissolve in its cocoon before becoming a butterfly. Steel is forged in fire. Every form of growth in the natural world involves pressure, time, and often suffering. Why would human growth be any different? Yet, we try to bypass this. We want shortcuts, hacks, cheat codes. We want the six-pack without the workouts, the wisdom without the mistakes, the success without the failure. But if you remove the suffering, you remove the meaning, because it's the suffering that makes it real. You don't develop strength by avoiding struggle. You develop strength by choosing struggle, deliberately, repeatedly, relentlessly. You choose the cold shower. You choose the extra mile. You choose the brutal honesty with yourself when no one is watching. Because each time you choose discomfort, you're expanding your threshold. You're conditioning your mind to operate under pressure. You're telling yourself that you are capable of enduring more than you thought. And with that new belief system comes growth. Real, permanent, life-changing growth. The truth is, comfort is a liar. It whispers to you, you're okay, just as you are. But what it really means is, stay the same. And that's the trap most people fall into. They chase comfort, and years later, they look back and realize they're still the same person they were a decade ago. Same fears, same excuses, same regrets. Growth doesn't happen in those conditions. It can't. It only happens when you choose to get uncomfortable and stay there long enough to adapt. It happens when you voluntarily put yourself in situations where you might fail, where you might look stupid, where you might fall flat on your face. And you keep showing up anyway. This is why suffering is sacred, because it strips away the lies. It reveals who you really are underneath the noise, and it gives you the opportunity to build someone new from the ground up. But you have to be willing to go there. You have to be willing to walk through the fire, not around it. You have to be willing to let go of your comfort and embrace the pain, because only then, only in the heart of discomfort, does true growth begin. Mental toughness is not something you are born with. It's not a gift. It's not luck. It's a skill, a weapon, a sharpened edge that is earned through relentless effort and deliberate exposure to hardship. It's built one hard decision at a time, one brutal experience after another, in moments of pressure, pain, and exhaustion. Mental toughness is forged in the fire, and that fire is suffering. There is no other way. When life is easy, you don't need mental toughness. You don't need resilience when everything is going your way. You don't build calluses on your mind when the road is smooth. But the moment life hits back, when you're tired, when you fail, when the world tells you you're not enough, That's when your mental toughness is tested. And if you haven't trained for that moment, you'll break, you'll fold, you'll run. That's why the ones who win in life are the ones who expose themselves to hardship on purpose. They suffer by choice, not by accident. So when life throws real pain their way, they've already been there. They've already bled in training, so they don't die in the fight. You don't get mentally tough by reading about it, by watching videos, or by pretending. You get it by stepping into the arena. You get it by facing fear, doubt, and pain, and pushing forward anyway. Every day that you train your mind to operate under stress, every moment you keep moving forward, when everything in you says to quit, you're conditioning yourself to become stronger. You're reprogramming your brain to fight, to endure, and to dominate. And that transformation only happens through repeated exposure to struggle. When David Goggins talks about mental toughness, he's not talking about being loud, cocky, or arrogant. He's talking about going to war with yourself. He's talking about the voice in your head that tells you to stop and choosing to keep going. He's talking about suffering day after day and using that pain as fuel. It's about developing the kind of discipline that doesn't disappear when you're tired, angry, or afraid. It's about becoming someone who refuses to back down, no matter how hard things get. Mental toughness is built when you hold the line under pressure, when you're doing pull-ups and your arms are on fire, but you do another rep. When you run in the freezing cold because comfort is your enemy. When you wake up at 4 a.m., not because it's trendy, but because it's hard and you want to be harder. It's built in the silence when no one's clapping, when no one's watching, and when no one cares, and you do the work anyway. Pain is a test. Every ache, every cramp, every burning muscle is a question: how bad do you want this? And every time you push past that wall, every time you ignore the screaming voice in your head that says, quit, you answer that question with your actions. That's how mental toughness is formed. Not overnight, not through comfort, but by walking through hell and deciding to keep going again and again. It's not just about pushing through physical pain either. Mental toughness is about emotional and psychological resilience. It's about standing tall when life shatters your plans, when you lose the job, when the relationship ends, when the goal you fought for falls apart. Mental toughness is what keeps you grounded when the storm hits. It's what allows you to control your emotions, focus on what matters, and continue to act with purpose even when chaos surrounds you. That strength is not natural. It's earned through deliberate exposure to difficulty and the decision to respond with power instead of panic. Most people avoid pain. They avoid discomfort. They back away the moment things get tough. That's why most people stay average. But the elite, the ones who lead, the ones who achieve, the ones who dominate, they run straight toward the struggle, not because they enjoy it, but because they know that every painful step is building their armor. Every hard moment is preparing them for something greater. Every single day they embrace the pain, they are becoming harder to kill, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. You don't become unbreakable by living a soft life. You don't build resilience by staying safe. You have to step into pain. You have to feel the heat. You have to challenge yourself every day. Not once in a while, not when it's convenient, but every single day. That's the only way mental toughness is developed. You suffer on purpose and you rise on purpose. You expose yourself to what others run from, and in doing so, you become something different, something stronger, something untouchable. Because in the fire of suffering, the weak are burned away, and the tough are born. Suffering is often misunderstood. People see it as something to avoid, something negative, something to be feared. But that perspective is what keeps most people trapped in mediocrity. Because suffering, when embraced with purpose, is not punishment. It's the ultimate teacher. It strips away the noise, the excuses, the distractions, and it forces you to confront your raw, unfiltered self. That's where real learning begins. When you're suffering, when you're in pain, you're fully present. You're no longer thinking about what people think, about comfort, about luxury. You're locked into survival. And in that space, you discover the truth about what you're capable of, the truth about your weaknesses, the truth about what needs to change. In today's society, everything is designed to avoid suffering. Fast food, fast entertainment, fast answers. Pain is medicated, distracted from, numbed out. But the moment you numb the suffering, you also numb the growth. That's why most people never evolve. They stay in the same cycles because they run from discomfort instead of learning from it. Suffering, when used properly, is feedback. It tells you where you're weak. It shows you what needs work. It teaches you discipline, humility, and self-respect. But you can only receive those lessons if you're willing to sit in the pain long enough to learn. David Goggins talks about how suffering changed him. Not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, completely. He didn't become who he is by avoiding hard times. He became who he is because he walked straight into suffering again and again and let it break him down. Not so he could stay broken, but so he could rebuild himself stronger each time. Suffering became his university. It became his gym, his classroom, his battleground. Every painful moment was a lecture. Every failure was a test. Every brutal day was another lesson in how far he could push, how much he could endure, how strong his mind could become. When you treat suffering as a teacher, you stop resenting it. You stop asking, why me? And you start asking, what is this trying to show me? You begin to realize that the hardest moments in your life are the ones that shaped you the most. Not the easy days, not the victories, but the struggle, the moments where you were exhausted, doubting yourself, feeling alone, and had to keep going anyway. That's where character is formed. That's where you build grit. That's where your identity is reforged in fire. Pain makes you pay attention. It makes you focus. It forces you to become intentional. When you're suffering, you're not thinking about a million other things. You're thinking about what's right in front of you. That level of focus is rare. And that's why suffering creates high performers, because it teaches you to eliminate distractions, to center yourself in discipline, to operate with precision even under pressure. It forces you to adapt, to evolve, to get sharper, faster, stronger. And it does so with zero tolerance for excuses. There is no shortcut to wisdom, and there is no growth without pain. You can read every book, listen to every podcast, watch every motivational video, but until you suffer, until you feel the weight of your decisions and the cost of your actions, you haven't learned anything real. Knowledge without application is empty. But when you go through something, when you bleed, when you cry, when you feel like you can't go on, and you push through it anyway, that experience teaches you something permanent. It brands your soul. It changes how you think, how you act, how you view the world. You become more resilient, more disciplined, more focused. And that change stays with you forever. Suffering also exposes who's real and who's pretending. When the pressure hits, when the pain rises, the masks fall off. You find out who you really are when things get hard. Are you someone who quits? Someone who complains? Someone who breaks? Or are you someone who adapts, who endures, who becomes stronger under pressure? That answer doesn't come from what you say. It comes from what you do in the middle of the storm. And the only way to find that out is to suffer. You don't know your limits until you reach them. You don't know your strength until you're forced to use it. And you don't know your purpose until it's all you've got left to hold on to. Suffering humbles you. It kills the ego. It reminds you that no matter how strong you think you are, there's always another level. There's always more to learn. There's always a part of you that can be improved. And it's only through pain that you get access to that part. The deeper the suffering, the more profound the transformation. That's why the people who have suffered the most often carry the most wisdom. They've been to hell. They've lost. They've failed. They've struggled. And they came back smarter, harder, better, because they didn't waste the pain. They used it. Most people avoid suffering because they think it will destroy them. What they don't realize is that avoiding it guarantees destruction. You become soft. You become fragile. You become emotionally weak and mentally lazy. Suffering, on the other hand, makes you sharp. It keeps you grounded. It teaches you how to control your emotions, how to regulate your thoughts, how to act instead of react. It turns chaos into clarity. And the more you face it, the more skilled you become at navigating it. You stop fearing pain and you start using it. Discipline is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. And it's one of the most brutal, most unforgiving, yet most empowering forces you'll ever harness. When people talk about success, they talk about motivation, they talk about passion, but those things are fleeting. Discipline is what stays when motivation leaves. It's what gets you out of bed at 4 a.m. when you're exhausted. It's what pushes you to train, to study, to work, to grind, even when every cell in your body is screaming to quit. And that discipline is built by doing what needs to be done, not when you feel like it, but especially when you don't. Discipline is the decision to act regardless of emotion. Most people live their lives guided by feelings. If they feel tired, they skip the workout. If they feel discouraged, they stop chasing the goal. If they feel uncomfortable, they retreat into safety. That's why they never grow, because they let feelings dictate actions instead of letting discipline dominate feelings. But the mentally tough, the high performers, the outliers, they move differently. They don't ask themselves how they feel. They just do what must be done. Whether it's raining, whether it's hard, whether it hurts, they show up because discipline is not optional for them. It's a requirement. David Goggins lives by this standard. He doesn't rely on motivation because he knows motivation is temporary. He relies on structure, on systems, on self-imposed rules that he refuses to break. That's what separates the exceptional from the average. Most people are waiting to feel ready. They're waiting for some magical burst of inspiration to carry them through the hard times. But the ones who win are the ones who act when there's no fire, no cheering, no praise. They grind in silence. They execute in the dark. They become machines of purpose because they've chosen discipline over comfort. Discipline is not about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about doing it every single day, no matter how you feel. You may not be perfect. You may stumble. You may fall. But discipline means you get back up and keep going. You don't make excuses. You don't negotiate with weakness. You hold yourself to a higher standard even when no one else is watching. That's what real strength looks like. Showing up when there's no reward, no recognition, just you versus you. To build discipline, you have to make hard choices repeatedly. You have to say no to the easy path, no to the snooze button, no to the junk food, no to the distractions. And every time you make that hard choice, every time you override comfort with purpose, you're building muscle. Not just physical, but mental. You're programming your brain to obey your will instead of your impulses. That's power. That's control. That's freedom. Because once you master discipline, you no longer have to rely on external forces to push you. You become self-driven, self-led, self-contained. Discipline isn't glamorous. It's boring. It's repetitive. It's hard. It's getting up and doing the same grind, day in and day out, even when the results don't show up immediately. It's pushing through the plateau, trusting the process, and staying the course. Most people quit because they expect quick wins. But discipline teaches you patience. It teaches you to delay gratification. It teaches you to keep stacking bricks even when the wall hasn't appeared yet. And then one day, after months or years of consistent effort, that wall is towering, unshakable, built not on emotion, but on discipline. When you're disciplined, you become dangerous. You're no longer a slave to how you feel. You no longer flinch at adversity. You face the same resistance as everyone else, but you've trained yourself to move through it. You have rules. You have non-negotiables. You operate with intention, not impulse. That's rare. And in a world full of softness, full of excuses, full of quitters, that discipline is your edge. It's what separates you. It's what makes you unstoppable. Discipline also builds trust, not with others, but with yourself. When you say you're going to do something, and then you do it over and over again, you start believing in your own word. That self-trust becomes confidence. And that confidence becomes your identity. You stop questioning your ability. You stop needing validation. You stop being reactive. You start walking with certainty because you've proven to yourself through countless acts of discipline that you are capable. That belief is unshakable, and it's built, not bought. In the moments when life tests you, when you're tired, when it hurts, when you're alone, discipline is what keeps you in the game. Not hype, not emotion, not external praise, just raw, relentless commitment to doing what you said you would do. That's what David Goggins embodies. That's what elite performers live by. They don't give in to how they feel. They live by what they've committed to. Discipline becomes their way of life. It's not a task. It's who they are. They don't look for the easy way out. They look for the hard way in, and they take it every time because through that hard way, they evolve. They sharpen. They dominate. Becoming you were meant to be requires a complete transformation, not just in your habits, not just in your goals, but in your identity. You do not become a warrior, a leader, a savage by wishing for it or imagining what it would feel like. You become that person by fighting for it every single day. You become who you fight to be, and that fight is ugly. It's brutal. It's painful. But it is the only path that leads to real change. And most people will never walk that path because it demands too much. It demands that you kill your old self. The one who made excuses, the one who quit early, the one who cared more about comfort than character. The transformation you're after doesn't happen with time alone. It happens through pain, through suffering, through deliberate, ruthless self-discipline and constant exposure to pressure. Because the person you are today is not equipped to handle the life you want tomorrow. You can't step into your full potential while dragging around the same weakness, the same excuses, the same broken mental patterns. That version of you has to die. You have to bury the soft version of yourself, the one who folds when it gets hard, the one who breaks down when things don't go right. You have to replace that version with someone forged in fire. Someone who's been through the grind, who's eaten dirt, who's failed and bled and crawled through rock bottom and came out swinging. Fighting to become someone new isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily battle. You wake up every morning and go to war with your old identity. You fight your laziness. You fight your fear. You fight that voice in your head that wants to keep you average. And you don't win by accident. You win by choice. Every day you choose whether to level up or stay the same. You choose whether to push yourself or stay soft. And if you don't choose to fight, you automatically choose to lose. This battle isn't for everyone. Most people are comfortable being comfortable. They want the result, not the war. They want the transformation without the struggle. But the ones who truly rise, the ones who become unrecognizable to who they once were, are the ones who fight like hell for it. They're the ones who put themselves through adversity on purpose. They're the ones who seek out the pain, the cold, the fatigue, the silence, because they know that every second of suffering is shaping them into something more focused, more disciplined, more unbreakable. You don't find yourself by sitting in comfort. You create yourself by getting uncomfortable, by throwing yourself into situations where failure is real, where your weakness is exposed, where your limits are tested and your back is against the wall. That's where identity is formed, not in the light, but in the dark. Not when things are easy, but when everything feels impossible and you keep moving forward anyway. You begin to see a different version of yourself in those moments. One that doesn't flinch, one that doesn't break, one that stands tall when the world crumbles. And you begin to realize that this version isn't a dream. It's who you really are underneath all the layers of fear and doubt. But you only meet that version if you fight for it, if you demand it from yourself, if you suffer for it. Because becoming isn't passive. It's not about waiting. It's about work. Relentless, unforgiving work. You have to earn your evolution. You have to earn the right to look in the mirror and see a warrior staring back. That doesn't come from reading books or watching videos. That comes from putting in the reps when no one's watching. From waking up early when no one cares. From pushing through the pain when no one's cheering. From fighting when no one believes in you. Not even you. And the truth is, you'll have to do it alone. No one is going to come rescue you. No one's going to force you to fight for your future. That's your job. That's your responsibility. You decide what kind of person you become. You decide whether you rise or stay stuck. You decide whether the suffering you're going through is going to destroy you or build you into something indestructible. It's not about what happens to you. It's about how you respond. Every struggle is a test. Every setback is an opportunity to sharpen your blade. Every failure is a chance to get smarter, tougher, harder. And if you show up for the fight every day, if you keep choosing to grow even when it hurts, eventually you become someone else entirely. Someone who doesn't fear the dark. Someone who thrives under pressure. Someone who's earned every scar and wears them like armor. That's the version of you that lives on the other side of suffering. The version that's disciplined, focused, relentless. But you don't find that version by accident. You create it. You carve it out of pain. You mold it in the fire of your hardest moments. You fight for it one brutal, unforgiving day at a time. And when you finally look in the mirror and see that version of yourself, the one you bled for, suffered for, fought for, you'll realize it was worth every sleepless night, every setback, every lonely step forward. Because you didn't just survive the pain, you used it. You became someone forged by discipline, hardened by suffering, and unstoppable by choice. You became who you were always meant to be because you were willing to fight